Thank you for checking out Coastal Community Church. We hope that you receive hope and encouragement through this week's message. If this ministry has impacted your life in any way, please share your story at mystory@coastalcommunity.tv. We hope you enjoy the service.
Well, good morning, Pompano. How you guys doing this morning? Awesome. That actually scared me. So, well, welcome to Coastal. We're glad that you're here this morning and excited about this relationship series. Before we kind of dive into that, this is a big weekend for us. We've got some big news as a church. You know, we're one church, two locations, and we happened to launch this location just about 2 years ago, and so we love you guys here. And our Pompano Beach or our Coconut Creek location has been going for almost 6.5 years now, and so we've been on a journey as a church. And some things have happened over the last couple months that have been pretty incredible. There's a scripture out of Ephesians chapter 3 that we have used a lot, that I've read a lot, that is one of those scriptures that I believe is the very heart of God. It's Ephesians 3:20 and 21. It says, "Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we could ask or imagine." Referring to God there, we serve a God who is able to do immeasurably more than all we could ask or imagine. And that has always been my prayer for our church. That's been my prayer for your life. I believe that God has done that in a lot of people's lives. He's done immeasurably more than you could ever even imagine. You didn't even know God existed, and all of a sudden you've come into a relationship with him. He's changing the game for you, and it's incredible. He's done that in some people's finances. He's done that in marriages. He's done that in friendships. I mean, God is incredible. And it feels like for a long time we've been waiting for him to do that for our church. Like, where is that immeasurably more when it comes to some aspects of it? And so in January, we had a time of prayer and fasting like we do as a church. And as a staff, we do that for 21 days. And during that time, it was just this frustration that was kind of building up inside of me personally. You know, anybody ever get frustrated with God and like, God, where the heck are you? Like, what's up with you? And I know that that's always kind of a scary conversation to have with God. You're like, am I going to get struck by lightning when I say that? And so I was having one of those moments with God, and it kind of lasted a couple of days. I'm sad to admit that, but it's true. I was just frustrated. And then God did Ephesians 3:20 and 21. He did immeasurably more. As a church, you know, we've been portable in all of our locations for a long time. And today, I am standing here with a contract to purchase 7.29 acres of land in Parkland, Florida for our Coconut Creek campus. And so, in fact, we have a picture of it right here somewhere. I think this is a picture of the 7.29 acres on University Park in Parkland, Florida. And this is a big thing. You know, you guys have been setting up for like 2 years here. They've been setting up for almost 7 years in a high school. And so this is a huge answer to prayer for us. We're getting ready to close on this piece of property June 6th, and we believe it's going to be a game changer for our church. Now, some people have asked, especially in Pompano Beach, does that mean like we're ending this over here? Heck no. This, like, we're one church, multiple locations. That doesn't mean we're ending this. This just means that we're getting a space for them. Just like 2 years ago, they made an opportunity for you to be here. They're the ones that funded this campus. They made this happen, and it's our opportunity to celebrate with them the same way they've celebrated with us over here. Everything that's happened. And so we're totally jacked up. We can't wait to see what God's going to do over the next year or two as we go through this process of building buildings and different things. And that's going to happen here as well at some point. But we just want this to be a day where we celebrate across all places, all that God is doing in our church, because God is awesome. Can we give it up for God for showing up? Let me give you the cool news. This property was listed at almost originally $4 million. It was $3.8 million was the original listing. We're buying this piece of property for $1.25 million. Like, if you got a deal like that on a house, you'd be way more excited about it. Y'all are a bunch of haters. You all should be standing up to your feet, cheering. Like, I know they did, but whatever. You can sip your haterade. You can sip on that. We'll talk to you today. We got to talk to you today. There's some forgiveness that you need to have in your heart. And so anyways, hey, we're going to dive in today. We're in this relationship series called Relationship Goals. And this is what I know about all of us. All of us want great relationships. We want healthy friendships. We want great marriages. We want to have these incredible connections with our kids. We want to have no conflict at family meals at Thanksgiving with Uncle Eddie. You know, we want all of that in our life. And for a lot of us, we live relationally as if time is going to last forever. You know, we say this, we live with this mentality when it comes to relationships of someday I'm going to have a better relationship with my wife. Someday I'm going to connect with my kids. Someday I'm going to have time for my parents that are aging. And we live with this someday mentality. And the problem with the someday mentality when it comes to relationships is we're living our life as if it's going to last forever. And that just isn't the case. In fact, Psalms reminds us, David reminds us in Psalms 39, he says, Lord, remind me how brief my time on earth will be. Remind me that my days are numbered and how fleeting my life is. You have made my life no longer than the width of my hand. My entire lifetime is just a moment to you. At best, each of us is but a breath. And Scripture says this, it says, hey, listen, everybody, your days are numbered, just like my days are numbered. All of us have a limited life scope here on earth. In fact, there's one thing I can guarantee is going to happen for all of us, and that is the fact that we are all going to die at some point. Some of us sooner than others. And the reason David writes this isn't to create this anxiety in our life. It is to remind us about the value of our life. Like that we're not supposed to live life as if it's going to last forever, but we're to live intentionally, and we're to build our life off what matters most. And we're to value what matters most in life instead of valuing things that are only temporary for the moment. And what he's basically challenging us is he's saying, hey, what are your priorities? Like, what are you making a priority in your life? And when you start thinking about priorities, and I've experienced some things in the past year that have caused me to be at a lot of deathbeds in last year and sitting with people at the end of their life. And the priority for people at the end of their life is always relationships. They want to have the people they love around them and the people that have loved them. That's all they care about. Nobody is ever sitting on their deathbed talking about their accomplishments, talking about the money that they made. Like, nobody is focused on those things. They're always focused on the most important matters of life. And for most people, the most important matters of life to them are people. And it's not like you guys don't know this information. But if I were to ask you to write out your top 3 priorities in life, I'm going to guess that at or near the top of your list would be relationships. You would say, man, relationships are a priority to me, like my family, my friends, those closest to me. Like, those are the things that are important to me. And my next question would be, does your calendar reflect that? Does the choices that you're making in life back up that reality of the list that you just made internally in your mind? And I read this on Pinterest this weekend. I thought it was so good. It said, you can go on all day about what your priorities are, but your priorities are what you did last week. Isn't that true? I mean, like, our priorities are the very things that we are putting first and foremost in our life. And so why do we say that relationships are a priority, but yet our calendar and our lifestyle don't reflect that at all? And this has hit so close to home for me. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it is because in the last 6 months, I've lost 2 of my grandfathers. And one was lost in November. One was lost here in February. And what made me really start thinking about this is I say, man, relationships are a priority to me. You'll hear me say that. We do life together, all this stuff. But yet, one of my grandfathers I hadn't seen physically in over 5 years, and he lives an hour away. My other grandfather lives 3 hours away, and I hadn't seen him in 2 years. And it took them being on their deathbed to where they couldn't even communicate back to me, but I could communicate to them, for me to go to them and tell them how much I love them and how much I cared about them and the impact that they made in my life. And why does it take to the very end for us to make those things important? And like, honestly, I kind of get so frustrated because I say this is important to me, but yet in my life, I can look at my priorities and see that was not really being lived out. And that jacks me up. And I think sometimes, like, honestly, we just kind of got to shake ourselves and realize that we only get one life to live. Like, this is not the dress rehearsal to the real deal. Like, this isn't the teaser before the big movie that's going to come on. This isn't the pre-show band before the real big band comes out. Like, we are living our one and only life, and this adventure of a lifetime is meant to be lived in the healthiest context of relationship. And with relationships at the priority. And if we knew that, we would live it out a lot differently, I think. And so I have this question for us all. And it's a good question for us to answer. And it's this: if your life ended today, if your life were to end today, would you be proud of your relational world? Would you be proud of how things are structured? Would you be proud of how things are going? Would you be proud of the priorities you have placed on those relationships? And this is a difficult question. It's a question I've asked myself. And I think in reflecting on this, I think there's 3 areas that if we were to make relationships a priority, we would primarily focus on these 3 things. And if you're taking notes, the first one is this: we would focus on time. We would put a priority on time. I think that if you knew that your time was suddenly limited, the one thing that you would do is you would spend time in those relationships. Because the one thing that I've learned about healthy relationships is they are not microwavable. Like, you don't just put it in for 2 minutes and then it's done and it's perfect and you're good to go. No, they take time. And a lot of us are living with this mentality that, like, man, ain't nobody got time for that right now. We'll make time for that later. And if we were living on intentionally, we'd make those a priority. In fact, I put it in your outline like this: mediocrity becomes a constant in your relational world when you buy into the illusion that you have unlimited time. Listen, everything becomes just average when you live like, man, I got time some other time for that. Your friendships become just average. Your marriage becomes just average. Your family dynamics become just average. Your relationship with your kids become just average. And I don't think any one of us sets out intentionally to have average in life. Nobody's satisfied with average. Oh, like my relationship with Shayla is like we talk once. It's good. You know, like nobody's content with that. And that's the biggest danger in this idea of relationships, is that we just have unlimited time. And one of the major dynamics that I see playing out, and I'm gonna talk to an area right now that I don't talk a whole lot to, but I want to talk to parents real quick, because I see a dynamic playing out with parents and kids like never before. And what I see happening right now is that we are raising kids that are experience rich but relationally poor. Like, they are so experience rich in life, but they are so relationally poor. And I think that this has come out of really a good heart, and it hasn't been intentional. And the reason I say it's come out of a good heart is because here's what happens, I think, for a lot of parents, is they look at their kids and they go, man, I want to make sure that my child or my children experience everything that I never got to experience. I want to make sure that they have everything that I never got to have. And so what happens is because you want those things for your kids, you go out and you work and you work and you work to provide them with those things. And then you send them off to astronaut camp, and then they're involved in travel soccer for 37 weeks out of the year, and you're bringing them to this thing, and then you're taking them to that thing, and you're taking them to this thing, and you're taking them to that thing, and you're trying to make sure that they're doing that, and it looks really good because they're having all of these amazing experiences. But relationally, they're just poor. And it looks really good on the outside because they're having all of that. But when, honestly, is the last time you sat down at the dinner table without the cell phone, without the video games, without the iPad, without the TV on, and just had a real and meaningful conversation as a family? Because here's what I know. I know that every single parent wants to raise their kids so that they are ready to move into adulthood in life. I mean, that is the goal for every parent, I think. Maybe some of y'all, you like your kid living there at 37 years old, but that's just weird, okay? But for the majority of parents, I'm going to say the majority because there's always that one that's like, no, I want them to stay forever, okay? For the majority of parents, your goal is to raise them up so they're able to go out into the world and be an adult. And let me just tell you this, the best way you can prepare them to do that is not by them being experientially rich, it's by being relationally rich. That's the best preparation you can make for your children to be ready for this world. Because I've never been in a counseling session with a young adult who's out of their home and goes, you know what, TJ, all of my problems in life stem from the fact that my parents wouldn't put me in travel soccer. Or, you know what, I've struggled in relationships because I didn't get to go to astronaut camp when I was 8. The conversation never looks like that. You know what the conversation always is? It's, you know what, I'm struggling in life because I never knew my dad. Or every time I tried to have a conversation with my mom, she just emotionally wasn't there for me. She was somewhere else. And while we provided all of these experiences, relationally, there's this longing and there's this lack in life. And I'm not trying to guilt anyone in saying this because in reflecting back on my life, I was thinking about the most impactful moments of my life as a child. I'm 37 years old. You want to know what the most impactful thing that I can remember from my entire childhood is? It's every morning waking up and sitting at breakfast with my stepdad, and my stepdad asking me questions. My stepdad asking me about what was going on in life. My stepdad reading scripture to me and explaining the Bible, and him praying for me every morning. That's the most impactful thing. And this is what it told me, is that it doesn't take much, but it does take time. Doesn't take much, but it does take time. And if you want to have the best relationships possible in your marriage, it's going to take some time. In your parenting, it's going to take some time. In your friendships, it's not going to take much, but it is going to require time. And so, man, if we're going to make relationships a priority, we have got to make time a priority. Second thing we got to make a priority is our words. Words, if you're taking notes. And this is an area that I would encourage you to intensify when it comes to your relationships. Proverbs tells us this. It says, a tongue can bring death or life. And what it's basically saying is that your words and my words, they're powerful. And I don't understand why God did this or how he did this, but for some reason, he created your soul and my soul to be challenged and changed and transformed by the words that are spoken to us. There's something about the words that are coming in and out of our life that has a direct correlation and impact on our soul. And when it comes to our relational world, this idea of words and this idea of time are so critical. And I see another dynamic playing out here. when it comes to our words is that a lot of us, we fall into conversational patterns in life. And let me explain what a conversational pattern is so you get it. It's basically a rut that you get into in your conversations or in your words. And so I'll explain it like it goes with our marriage, with Shayla and I. So what happens, the conversational rut that I see in Shayla and I's marriage is that we'll come home from work, and here's what it looks like. TJ will talk about CrossFit. Shayla will talk about work, and then we're done. Then tomorrow, what happens is we come home, and TJ talks about CrossFit, Shayla talks about work, and then we're done. It's a conversational pattern that we fall into. And I'm going to guess that there's a conversational pattern that you fall into every night when you come home to your spouse as well. Maybe it's not with your spouse. Maybe you have a conversational pattern with your friend. You call them up on the phone. You go, hey, man, what's going on? Nothing. What are you doing? Nothing. How's your day going? It's good. You? Good. Cool. What was the football game last night? It's good, good. Hang up, right? Like over and over and over again. Or maybe it's like this with your parents. You call up your dad. Hey, Dad, how's it going? It's going. What's the weather like? It's cold. Good. Okay. How's Mom doing? She's alive. Good. We'll talk to you next week. You know, that's the conversational pattern. Some of y'all, you're like, I don't want to laugh right now, but that is really my life. Because it's so easy to just fall into this pattern. And all that we really want out of our relationships isn't a pattern, it's really intimacy. It's what we're all longing and hoping for out of every conversation is this intimacy. And intimacy is basically, when I say that word, is to be fully known and to be fully loved. It's what we all long for in every single relationship that we have, to be fully known and fully loved. And you want that in your relationship, but it's so much easier to stay in the comforts and confines of your conversational pattern rather than risk putting yourself out there and exposing yourself in that conversation. It's just easier to stay in that place. And we just end up using these conversational patterns over and over and over again. Now, some of us, when we think of intimacy, we automatically think, well, that means revealing my deepest and my darkest secret. And that isn't necessarily what intimacy is. Intimacy is any time that you're willing to get outside the comforts and the confines of those patterns. It's any time you're willing to move beyond just the superficial in the conversation to actually something real. And the way that you know that you move into something real is when you start talking about it, you feel a little bit of anxiety inside. And you go to yourself like, do I stop right now? And a lot of us do that. Or do I continue forward and feel emotionally slutty? Because that's the reality. That's how a lot of us perceive it. But that's not what that is at all. In fact, I put it on your outline like this. I put a little math problem. It's vulnerability plus curiosity equals intimacy. See, what every relationship requires is somebody to become vulnerable in the relationship, somebody to go, hey, this is where I am, this is what I'm going through, this is what I'm feeling, and for them to break outside of the mold of their conversational pattern and go, hey, this is the struggle that's happening in my life, and to put it out there. Like it takes somebody making that risk, and then on the flip side, the other person has to be curious in the relationship. They have to want to kind of take the bait right there and go, hey, tell me how you're feeling. Tell me what's going on. Like, how can I help you in this relationship? And when those two dynamics start happening, it always creates intimacy. It always creates intimacy. And that's what we're trying to accomplish. And so when you start to think about your relational world, I want to ask you two questions. First one is this, is who has God placed in your life? Should come up here. Like, who are the people that God has placed in your life? Immediately, everybody probably has a name or a face that kind of pops into their mind. There's somebody that God has placed in your life. And the second one is this. And what do they need to hear you say? Like, what is the thing that you need to speak to them that you know God has placed you in their life for? Maybe it's, I love you. Like, I really care about you. You are important to me. Maybe for somebody else, it's you know what? I was wrong in that conversation, or I was wrong in that circumstances, and I need you to forgive me. Maybe that's what you need to say in that conversation. Maybe for others of you, maybe they're going through a difficult and a really hard time, and they need to hear from you, I still believe in you in spite of the circumstances. Maybe they just need some encouragement from you in their life. And it's so important that we don't just bypass those things. That we realize that those people and those conversations, God put them there on purpose. And I understand that the moment you start breaking out of your conversational pattern with them, like you're risking something. I understand some of you probably have some pushback. You're like, man, I grew up in a family that we didn't really do emotion. Like we didn't share our feelings. And this is going to be really, really difficult for you to do. But you know what's even worse than you not sharing your feelings is missing out on God-sized opportunities because you were scared. And so we're going to do something a little bit different here today because I believe that God has placed somebody in every single one of our lives. And I believe he's giving us something to say to every single person in our life. And so I'd like for every single person to take out their cell phone. Take out your cell phone right now. There's one time in church that I'm like encouraging you to take your cell phone out. Make sure that it's on. And here's what I want you to do. We're going to put a clock up here. There should be like a countdown clock here. What we're going to do is I want you, that person that you thought of, I want you to text them what it is you need to tell them right now. I'm going to give you 60 seconds to do this. Every single one of us for the next 60 seconds, text somebody that you need to text and tell them what God needs you to tell them. Ready, start, go. Ten seconds, finish up those texts. Finish them up. All right, cool. Everybody, okay, here's what I need you to do. I need you to turn your cell phone off now. Just turn it off. Turn it off, okay, because I know some of y'all are going to be like, are they going to text me back? You know, like that's what you're concerned about. Like, I just need you to turn it off. I need your attention for like 5 minutes. 5 minutes, that's all I need. And I realize that some of y'all are like, you really are. You're anxious about it. And you know what? Some of y'all are going to get some incredible texts back. And then some of you guys, you know what? Maybe you had to say something that you don't really know if they're going to text you back. That was the risk you were taking in texting. And they might not text you back, but here's the deal. It doesn't matter what they do. What's important is that you follow God and what he's called you to do. So we're going to continue to move on. This third point is really important. It's this word grace. It's the word grace. You know, an interesting dynamic that I've found, especially being at the bedside of people that are getting ready to pass, is that the grudges, the hurts, they start thinking about those things differently than we normally think about the grudges and the hurts and the unforgiveness and the pain. At the end of people's lives, it seems like more than ever, they're ready to let go of those things and those experiences because they're tired of carrying the burden around. And here's what I'd like for all of us to do. Sorry, today is extremely experiential. I'd like for all of us to close our eyes. Everybody close their eyes. And right now, what I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to visualize the person that maybe you have a little bit of tension in your relationship with. Maybe there's some resentment. Maybe there's some bitterness. Maybe there's some unforgiveness in your life that you're holding against them. visualize that person. Y'all got them in your mind? You got them there? Just nod your head. Yeah. Okay, open your eyes. Now, one of the things that I can tell you is this right here is not actually about that person you just saw. This is about you. And this is actually for you. Has nothing to do with them. This is for you. This has nothing to do with them. And this is so important for you to remember. Because, listen, if you don't learn how to transform your pain, you're just going to transfer it to other people. If you don't learn how to transform that bitterness and that unforgiveness and that pain and that hurt that you've experienced, all you're going to continue to do is transfer that all throughout your life. And that's why I say this isn't for them. This isn't about that person. This is about you and every other relationship that you have. Because that bitterness, that pain, that hurt, you don't have the ability to isolate that just for that relationship. You don't have the ability to quarantine that part of your heart and go, well, those feelings are just for them, because that junk trickles and impacts every other person in your life. And so, if we don't learn how to transform that, if we don't learn how to turn that into something else, we're just going to transfer it. And so God has called all of us to transform that stuff. And listen, I'm not an expert on forgiveness. If you were here last week, you heard, man, this is something I've struggled with. Man, I'm still figuring this all out because I don't got it. I deal with it every day. I have to forgive over and over and over again. But I do believe the only power that we can get to truly forgive someone comes from one resource and one resource only, and that is from the place that first forgave us first. That is from a holy and a loving and all-knowing and all-powerful God. And whenever I start to focus my mind on Him rather than my sin, and listen, my sin is big and it's huge, and this is what blows my mind, is the fact that even when I was running from God and running as far away from Him as possible, the moment that I was willing to turn around, man, He embraced me, He accepted me, He forgave me. When I think that and I remember that and I realize that it's not just here, but it's here, it's a game changer. And some of us, we've got to get this idea of forgiveness from our head to our heart, because when we realize that we were first forgiven in spite of us, it's easy for us to forgive others in spite of them. And God is saying, man, there's this grace that is sufficient for all of your needs, but we have got to let go to have that grace suffice us. We've got to allow that to come up and in our lives. And here's the deal. Forgiveness is simply us letting go of my right to see that person hurt. That's what forgiveness is. It's letting go of my right to see them hurt back. Because what do we want when we're holding on forgiveness? We want them to feel what we felt. Oh, somebody was getting too excited about that. Like, oh yeah, that joker needs to feel. No. Forgiveness is going, you know what? I'm in pain. I don't want anybody else to experience that pain. And listen, it takes a lot to forgive. It takes a lot. But the cost of not forgiving cost is so much greater, because what it's going to cost you is your heart. So many times we're giving our heart to somebody that doesn't even deserve it, when there's one that deserves it all, and that's Jesus Christ. And because we were given grace, we need to extend grace right back out. And if we're going to have healthy relationships, it's all about us investing our time wisely. It's about using the power of our words but the people God has put in our lives to speak life into them and to fully embrace the grace that we have received and then reciprocate it right back out.
Thank you for checking out Coastal Community Church. We hope that you receive hope and encouragement through this week's message. If this ministry has impacted your life in any way, please share your story at mystory@coastalcommunity.tv. We hope you enjoy the service.